Hi, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Absolutely podcast. Today I'm joined by Tim. Tim, can you introduce yourself, the type of businesses that you work with, and the clients that you really like working with at the moment, and a bit more about your business, please?
So I'm Tim from TCS in Guernsey. We're a well, we always say a small practice, but by ICB standards, we're a large practice because there's six of us. And started in 2019, and we look after entirely SME businesses. Most of them are like consumer facing B2C businesses, and the majority of those are in hospitality. So they are pubs, bars, restaurants, cafes, coffee shops. And then we've got, some plumbers and some cleaners and that kind of thing. Anyone that sells primarily to consumers rather than to other businesses. We do have a small number of B2B clients as well, but they're definitely in the minority.
Fabulous. And how did your journey become in the bookkeeping industry? So, what made you become kind of pioneers of Guernsey's bookkeeping?
I moved to Guernsey. It'll be 8 years next month, actually. My wife's an A&E nurse, and she had the opportunity to move over here, so I thought I should probably come with her, because it'd have been, rather inconvenient otherwise. And I worked for a startup, and while I was working for that startup, I met a lot of interesting people that I otherwise wouldn't have met, and the startup then failed, as startups often do. And so after a bit of temping, I decided I was going to give it a go and start TCS. It's something that I'd been thinking about or had almost done a number of times in the past, but just never really sort of done it, if that makes sense. There was always an easier option that came up, or something where I could make more money immediately or something like that. So in the past, I'd always thought, oh yeah, it'd be nice, but no, I'll take this sensible job instead. And this time I just thought, no, actually, there's nothing to lose. Let's just give it a go. I was lucky enough to be offered a 6 month contract with someone that I'd met through the startup I was working for, which I could do part time whilst establishing the business. And without that, it would have been a lot more difficult, but it probably still, hopefully, would have been doable.
Yeah. So, what would be the one word you would describe your relationship with technology in your business?
Only one word. Like, you've met
One
me.
word.
It's very difficult for me to use one word when I could use 20.
Okay.
Our relationship with technology is fluid.
I like that. That's quite intuitive, that is. So let's talk about your favorites. What is the Apple software you simply could not run your business without?
So at the moment, the Apple software we could not run our business without. There's a few, but the primary one for us is Lightyear.
Okay.
And the reason, and there's a few others where you're going to get the answer off other people as well. Like, we couldn't run the practice now without Engager, for example, because we've embedded it so closely into the practice. But we did run the practice without it for 4 years before it came along. Like, the reason Lightyear is so important to us is because of the type of clients we primarily work with. We really needed an AP solution that was really, really good at handling very high volume. So, taking one of our average clients, which is a sandwich shop, two sandwich shops in Guernsey, you wouldn't believe how busy they are because we don't have any chain food places in Guernsey. There's no McDonald's, no KFC, no Greggs, no Pret, nothing like that. All of the independents are potentially a lot busier than they are in the UK. This particular client will easily turn over, £2,500 a day across both shops. And we need to be able to extract line by line all of their purchase invoices so that we can keep an eye on what's going on in their business, because they're getting deliveries 6 days a week. They come on paper invoices because they're also the delivery note, and we need to be able to extract that line by line information. Lightyear is the only solution that has been reliably able consistently to do that. So we trialed all of the others in the past. We tried Dext, we tried auto entry, which we do actually use for other things, but not for that. And various others, and nothing could keep up with it.
So how did you discover it? Was it kind of like a game changer from straight away, or was it kind of like a slow burner where you had to sort of learn with it to get the optimum out of it?
No, it was, by the time we came across Lightyear, we knew exactly what we needed, and we knew what our requirements were that couldn't be changed, and we knew what our nice to haves were. And I think from memory, I think we met them at Accountex, and we definitely met them at one of the trade shows. And my main question for them up front was, can you do, line item, like
Yeah.
these effects? Can you do line item by line item, and does it cost more? Right? Because a lot of the other solutions that we looked at in the past, obviously most of these systems are credit based, whether you're paying in advance or in arrears. Most of them, they'd be like, oh yeah, it's 1 credit per invoice. But then if you want multi-line, it's 2 credits. And if it's multi-line and there's more than 10 lines, then it's 3 credits. And it just became very expensive very quickly. And also a lot of them were very slow. So I will sort of caveat this by saying I understand this is no longer the case, but at the time that we trialed Dext, if an invoice was multi-line, you had to open it and then you had to manually click add line for every single line you wanted to add. We get invoices that are 30, 40, 50, 60 lines long all the time. So we need those to be the same price and extracted without spending hours and hours, because we used to time test it once upon a time, and we had a race, who can enter this purchase invoice line by line faster, Dext or a human being, and it was always a human being. Lightyear was the first one that we found where it was faster than the human being.
That's amazing. So can you talk us through how you use it in your day-to-day kind of workflow?
So pretty much all of our purchase invoices go through Lightyear for pretty much every client. There's a few that we either enter manually or put through something else just because of the nature of the client, but the vast majority, they go through Lightyear. And although it varies client by client, generally what will happen is we do everything internally. Some of our clients have an approval step as well, but a lot of them just trust us to, know what's going on in their business and know if an invoice shouldn't be approved. So we either scan in if they're on paper, or drag and drop in if they're by email the invoices. Somebody then takes them through the first stage, which is processing, which is where you essentially just make sure this is actually a valid invoice and assign the supplier. And then usually somebody else will do the approvals and sign-offs. So that's going through and making sure everything's coded correctly, making sure it's not a duplicate, which it sort of auto detects for you. If it's a UK client, we're checking that the VAT is all correct, etc. And Lightyear then also does some automated checking as well. So you can store the supplier's bank details in Lightyear, and if the bank details on the invoice have changed, it'll flag that to you so that you can investigate. Because we all know the invoice scam where you get what looks like a real invoice but with new bank details, and you're actually paying somebody else. So once all that's done, then it gets exported into Sage or Zero or whatever the client's system is. And that's kind of it, really. What I really like about Lightyear, though, is that you can, the archive is really searchable. So if I need to find an invoice and I can't really quite remember, was it on the first or the second or the third, or, I can't even actually maybe even remember what supplier it was, but I definitely remember seeing an invoice for chicken, right? I can just search for all invoices in that date range that contain the word chicken, and it will show me all of them, and I can get a copy of the invoice or check the price or anything like that really, really easily. And last point, but very key for me, Lightyear doesn't charge you until you export the invoice.
Wow.
So if you've got duplicates, or if you've got something that didn't need to be in Lightyear in the first place or anything like that, you're not getting charged for that. You're not using your credits. They charge you when you export it to Sage or Zero or whatever. And that's really key for me because of the volume that we do. We do get a lot of duplicates, because we have suppliers of our clients who email invoices directly to us, but then we get the paper version as well. But then another client using the same supplier might not have them emailed to us, or they might have forwarded it on. So you might have the same invoice 3-4 times, and if you're getting charged each time, it would soon become unsustainably expensive.
No, that's amazing. Are there any clever automations or things that you've set up to make your life easier using this software? Is it kind of like, have you done like we can all do like supplier rules, things like that? Because I know some of them are more adaptable to uses than others.
We haven't done lots, I'll be honest, but there is more that we can do, and more that we do for some clients that we just haven't done for others. And that's just, when I said we have a fluid relationship with technology, I think because of the volume that we do, sometimes we've been burned a few times by things that we thought, oh yeah, this is automated, this is fine, and it turned out that something had gone horribly wrong 2 months ago and we never noticed, and we have to unpick thousands and thousands of lines. what's a big time saver in Lightyear, same as really any other sort of software that you're doing categorization in, is that you can set up those rules about, okay, so this supplier is always telephones, or this item is always stationery, or if you see for a UK client, if you see train, then it's always zero VAT. Those sorts of rules, massive time saver, because although we do still like to check those, it means that it's already correct. So although we are still checking them by eye, we're not actually changing anything. So that obviously is a hell of a lot quicker.
No, that's brilliant. So would you say it's helped you scale, save time, or even keep your sanity by using Lightyear?
I'd say so, yeah. I think if we didn't have some Lightyear or something.
Okay, are there any common mistakes you've seen others using this software? So obviously you mentioned earlier about automation, that you can go to automation and miss kind of key things that your brain needs to double check. Have you seen any mistakes when people have actually used this kind of software before?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily with Lightyear itself, but with any sort of AP automation. I think a lot of people get too happy on categorization, and this isn't necessarily so much bookkeepers. It's more, and I'm going to get shouted at for saying this, but I've seen it from accountants a lot. That accountants who charge their clients and say, "Oh, we do your bookkeeping," but what they actually mean is they reconcile bank statement once a month. So it's by no means all accountants, and also clients who are doing their own bookkeeping. It's when they go, they set up a rule that just says Amazon is stationary, for example. But from Amazon, they've also bought tea bags. They've bought a new printer. They've bought, they've got a Prime subscription for faster deliveries or whatever. And then everything from Amazon goes to stationery. And they've bought 2 new iPads this year, and suddenly those are stationary, and on and on and on. That's the most common one, and I know we've all seen that 1,000 times, but it's really making the rules too broad. So Amazon is a prime example. What you really need to be doing with Amazon is, I mean, really, I don't really like cash coding anything if I can help it. I want to see the invoice. So a lot of our bank rules and things for a lot of our clients are set up that if it's not a match immediately to an invoice that already exists, we're going to post it as a payment on account. Obviously, because we use Sage, we can really easily post a payment on account, and then we can run an age creditors and see who's got missing invoices, which is great. With Xero, posting a payment on account is a bit more lengthy and convoluted, because you have to post it as an overpayment and that kind of thing, but it is still doable. And I think that one of the mistakes people often make if they're trying to do proper weekly detail level bookkeeping is they don't use that payment on account function. They cash code everything from the bank statement. So then you get miscodings, and you also get duplicates, right? Because you've cash coded something using a rule, but then they've also sent you the invoice for it, and then you've posted the invoice, right? Those are the most common mistakes that I see, and that is amplified by using AP software, because whatever AP software you're using, it often, it's usually not going to, as part of the workflow, check, oh, has there been a cash coding posting for this exact same amount or not? It's just going to see if that invoice already exists.
Cool. I totally get that. If you had a magic wand and you could change just one thing about Lightyear, what would you improve, or do you need to improve it?
There's a few little quirks that need ironing out of Lightyear, but to give the team their credit, they're very approachable, very friendly, and we know that they're working on a lot of them. The one that I would change is their expenses workflow. Their expenses workflow, as in staff expenses reimbursement, is too long-winded. There's too many different stages to it, and I'd like to see a much more simplified version of that. So if given a magic wand, that's what I would change.
Fabulous. Now we're going to go away from Lightyear now. So I want to ask you, apart from Lightyear, what is your 3 top go-to apps in your tech stack?
So for us, it's Engager, Sage, and Notion. So Notion obviously isn't actually accounting related at all. But in Notion, we have all of our process documents, and this is still a bit of a work in progress for us. It always has been, but it means that for every client and for every type of process, we've got a process document. So we've got a general, how do you do bank reconciliations? And then we've also got, okay, you're doing a bank reconciliation for ABC Limited. For this client, you should note these following things. You know, if this client transfers this amount of money to this account, it's actually this. If this client takes money out and puts their own name and wages, it's not wages, it's directors, like that kind of thing. So for each type of process and for each client, we've got one of those documents, and it makes it so much easier when you're training someone on a new process to be able to go through it with them. Obviously, we still train them properly. We don't just sort of go, there's the document, get on with it. But it means they've got something to refer back to. And I'm constantly encouraging the team to, you know, if they're doing something, especially if it's not something they do every single day, to have the Notion document open, to keep an eye on what's going on. But crucially, everybody's got edit access on most of those documents. There are some where they're locked and only myself and Millie can edit them. But most of them, the entire team's got access to edit those, and it gives us the audit trail of the edits as well. So that if they found an improvement to a process, or they found something where the wording of the document didn't make sense, or they found a faster way to do something, they can actually make that edit themselves for the rest of the team to then pick up on. So what you often lose, and it's been talked about to death, so I won't go into it deeply, but what you often lose as a practice grows beyond a certain number of people is that sort of just automatic communication of knowing that, you know, oh, you can save yourself some time by doing that. So you have one person who spends 20 minutes doing a task and another person who spends 40 minutes doing the task, and it's not because they're less competent or less fast, it's because they didn't know that a shortcut had been found that sped up the process.
No, I just actually discovered Notion in the last couple of weeks, and it's just blew my mind. I've started doing things like that similarly as well. And for even just for my own sanity, is Notion is my go-to place now for recording everything, because you can, like you say, you can even search on words and things like that, and it does help you. And having those clear processes out that you can edit and modify and modernize as the client engagement sort of grows and what they do grows is valuable, like you say. And Notion is an eye-opener. I totally get that.
The other thing that you can do in Notion is you can set up your own template documents, and that's really useful. So we've got like a template for, okay, this is a pub client. And what that means is when you go to write that person's process document, when you take them on as a client, you're not staring at a blank sheet of paper, but you're similarly not just straight away copying stuff from somebody else. So you've got, you know, the headings that you need or the sections or whatever. We also have a little control section at the top of each document that tells us who the document owner is, who last edited it. Is this document actually finished? You know, can you actually go by this document, or is it still work in progress? That's really, really useful as well. So that's in one of our templates. And yeah, it works incredibly well. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. I think, how often do you review or update your tech stack? Is it sort of regular? Is it kind of when you find a problem or you need to have a solution for something? Or is it something as and when it happens?
It's kind of on an as needed basis. Sometimes it sort of just happens. Notion sort of just happened. I was messing around with it for a completely different purpose, and I thought, hang on a minute, this is perfect. This would be amazing for our process documents and everything. That until that point had just been various Word and Excel documents. Sometimes we specifically go looking for a solution. Sometimes the perfect solution just appears. So Content Snare is a new one that we're using. Content Snare has the ability for you to you can do sort of templated forms and things like that you can send out to people, but in a way that's collaborative. So you can review their answers. For example, if they haven't given you enough information, you can send it back to them. We've just started using that, so we're nowhere near using it to its full potential yet. But one of the key uses of it, and like I said, we kind of stumbled across it really. One of the key uses is if it comes to the end of the month and you're still missing a load of invoices you've asked the client for, or you've got some queries on some transactions, you can put them in they call it a project in Content Snare. And it's gonna, if they don't answer you or don't upload the documents, whatever, it's gonna remind them for you. You can set those reminders, because we've all been in that situation where you've got 8 queries for a client. So you send them an email and they reply, but the reply only contains answers to 3 of them. And then it contains an answer to the 4th and 5th one, but the answer's nonsense. So, you know, you said, oh, can I have a receipt for this £182 that you spent at Boots last week? And they give you a receipt for £4.50 they spent at Superdrug instead, that kind of thing. So we can reject their answer back then in Contents Net. Now, what that means is you don't have to spend ages going down a big, long email trail, working out what's been answered, working out what you're still waiting for, answering a query to a query, all of that. It's all structured, and that's absolutely massive. And then the other one that just kind of appeared, but after a lot of cajoling and convincing, obviously, is Adfin. Who launched, they had their official launch in Guernsey last week. We're really happy we had them over, and Amy and Elizabeth from ICB came over as well to join in with that. And that's not even just for us, right? That's the first provider of direct debit payments in Guernsey for small businesses since Go Cardless stopped signing up Guernsey clients about 9 years ago. So that's absolutely massive, and that's something we've jumped on straight away, and that's been really useful. And we've now got pretty much all of our clients immediately on direct debit, and now I don't have to worry about chasing anyone for money anymore, which I hate. Really, actually, quite enjoy doing credit control for other people, but my own credit control, I absolutely despise it.
Okay, so we've all gone to these great shows where we've looked at all the software out there, but what is your key advice to any bookkeepers who feel really overwhelmed with all the software choices out there?
So 2 bits of advice: try multiple things and work out what you need, right? Because there's too many. You've all seen me post on LinkedIn before about the cult of Xero, right? And people say Xero is the only software, it's the only thing. Anyone who's not using Xero is a moron. And people who prefer other software generally don't behave like that. So we've got about 8 clients on Xero, and the reason they're on Xero, most of them, a couple are on Xero because they're on Xero, but they really should be on Sage, and we're going to move them at year end. But the others are on Xero because for whatever reason, it's the best software for them. And that could be because it integrates with one really, really industry specific app that they want to use really, really well. Or it might be that they have a lot of very simple fixed assets. So Xero is head and shoulders above the competition on its basic fixed asset register. If you don't want to do anything too complex, if you've just got stuff that you've bought that you need to depreciate on a monthly basis, and you've got a lot of those, Xero all the way, right? Not that QuickBooks and Sage can't do it. It's just that Xero does that better at the moment. Okay. I try not to be led by other people, and that doesn't mean I'm going to be contrary and use software that isn't as good just because I want to be different. What it means is that I spend a lot of time actually trying to work out, is this software actually right for our clients, and is it right for us? And I've never, and that's not to say that, people who run their practice from the basis of, oh, it's Xero or nothing. If you refuse to move to Xero, then you're not going to be our client. That's fine. Like, I don't think that's an invalid position to take. But what I'm saying to someone who's new in practice is, before you take that position, really think about, is that the right move, right? Is Xero or Sage or QuickBooks or one of the many other solutions the right solution for all of your clients? And similarly, practice management, right? I love Engager. I think it's fantastic. I think that the price point is absolutely stunning. Let's hope that TaxCalc don't put that up soon. But is it right for you? I've spoken to a few people who have tried Engager, and for very valid reasons, it is not the right solution for them. And then they're using Carbon or something else. There's no one size fits all. Everybody's different, and you need to work out what the right thing for you is. And I think in the same sort of vein, people will go to Accountex and they'll come to the ICB summit and they'll go to DAS and things like that, and they'll listen to seminars given by experienced bookkeepers, experienced accountants who have been in business a while, who will say, you should do this. And then they go away thinking, God, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. Or, oh my God, I'm not doing that. I'm stupid. Maybe I should be doing that. That's exactly the same as the software. don't assume that just because something worked for somebody else, it's going to work for you. And don't assume that you should be trying to emulate those people, because you're your own person, right? There's all this advice around, oh, everyone should niche. Some people don't have a niche, and that's absolutely fine. Some people like us, I like to say, we more specialize, right? We're not heavily niched into just hospitality, but that is 60% of our client base. That's our specialism, right? But a lot of people think that they have to get into a niche because there's this narrative that goes around that says, oh, I'd rather employ an expert in one field than a jack of all trades. Why can't you be an expert in 2 or 3 fields? Like, we're not that limited as human beings. We've got quite impressive brains, and we should be able to say it. And it's exactly the same as the software. We get people who say, our clients like to know that we know absolutely everything there is to know about software X. And that's why we don't want to muddy the waters with software Q and software S. And I think, well, that's only 3 bits of software. Then the same bookkeeper then posts on their LinkedIn a diagram of their tech stack that's got 42 different apps in, and they're experts in all those 42 apps, but they're saying, oh no, we only use Xero because otherwise we couldn't possibly be an expert in it. Now, it's that's what I really think people need to try and avoid, right? Is that whole I realize it's ironic because I'm saying, like, listen to me, don't listen to all these other people. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, listen to everything, take it on board, consider it carefully, including what I'm saying right now, before you act and before you jump, 3 feet into one camp. If you decide that you're going to be a Xero only bookkeeper, or a Sage only bookkeeper, or a QuickBooks only bookkeeper, or whatever, then that's fine as long as you've done it for a valid reason. But if you've done it because you feel like you should because someone else told you you should, that's not a valid reason.
No.
And I had exactly this. We have people have seen on LinkedIn every now and then, we have a bit of a sort of gentle teasing with an accountancy firm on Ireland. And I made this point recently that, just because you only use Xero doesn't mean, that you can't actually be intelligent enough to use another piece of software as well. And I said to the director of that company, the difference between them and a lot of other people is she never tells anyone that they're stupid for not doing what she does. And that's the real key difference. She will present the benefits of doing it her way, and I can present the benefits of doing it my way. But then that new individual in the industry should go off and decide for themselves. They shouldn't be like, oh yeah, actually, like, Tim said this, so I better do that. Like, I'm not like the oracle of bookkeeping, and neither is anyone else.
I totally get that. No, I totally get that. And I think everybody should follow their own lane, basically, and not be a sheep. Find out what works for you and your clients, because no practice in our country is exactly the same. And I think you've hit that nail on the head completely. And I'm totally with that. My practice personally is a mixture of all software. So I have free agent, Xero, QuickBooks, Sage. It's all dependent on what works for the client and how their business is run. And I totally get it. And the apps that I need to help them resolve their issues. So I'm 100% with you. Right, quick fire round. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Okay, Xero, QuickBooks or Sage?
Obviously Sage.
Coffee or tea?
No, you can't have coffee or tea. That's a bad question. It's coffee in the morning and then tea for the rest of the day.
Okay, we'll do Tim's rules then. Okay. What piece of tech or business wisdom you wish you'd learned at the beginning rather than now?
Oh, that's really difficult.
Sorry.
I think that's fine. I think the one thing I wish I'd learned earlier is something that I tell people all the time, which is write everything down. Write down every process, write down every note, write down everything as if you're going to wake up with no memory tomorrow, or as if you're going to wake up with 100 employees tomorrow. Write everything down.
I love that advice. I absolutely love that advice. And finally, my final question for you today is, what app do you think is underrated and deserves a little bit more love?
I know everyone's going to think that I'm getting paid for this or something. I promise I'm not. Sage is underrated and deserves a little bit more love in the wider community. I think that those of us that are involved with ICB know what Sage currently is like and its current status and how it works and everything like that. The wider community, I still see people expressing surprise when they realise that we're not talking about Sage 50 and we're not talking about desktop. So I think that because I think we've all, had so much exposure to Mr. Downing and Mr. Compton that I think we forget that isn't maybe more widespread knowledge, and I think that's a shame. And
Yeah.
I think adjacent to that, though, to be honest, everyone needs to remember that Sage 50 and other desktop products like QBD and things like that are still perfectly valid choices for many, 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 many businesses, right? Yes, in an ideal world, we think everything should be cloud-based and everything should be accessible from everywhere all the time. But if you're running a medium-sized manufacturing business and everything happens in one place and you've got an in-house finance department, an in-house buying department, and everything's in-house, and you've been running on Sage 200 for, the last 15 years, that might actually be working perfectly fine for that business. No one should be changing just because, oh, it's cloud-based, it's better, right? As much as we all think that, like in an ideal world, of course they'd be using something cloud-based. Of course they'd be outsourcing this and this and this, and people would be able to access it from anywhere. But those older pieces of software were so successful and had such longevity for a reason. It wasn't just because there wasn't anything else. It's because they're good, in-depth, solid pieces of software. Some of them are terrible. But you only have to go on the accounting web forums to see how many people still use VT. It's still got an enormous user base and they love it. And they wish that someone would just simply replicate it in the cloud, but no one has yet.
No. I remember using VT years ago and it's still based on Excel and it still does the job that many people, like you say, many clients need. So that's brilliant. No, that's it. So thank you very much. That has been so insightful today. And thank you for being a very, very worthy guest of my podcast. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks for having me on and not having a power cut this time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha.
Thank you.